Hi class, Professor Brennan. I am back now talking about fundamental concepts of argumentation. And we are in part 2, and I'm going to go straight to the PowerPoint. We just finished talking about prima facie cases and what that is. What do I mean by prima facie? Let's go right there. Okay. So I'm going to imagine that many of you are already familiar with who RBG is, or Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She recently just passed away. She was a Supreme Court judge of the United States Supreme Court, and there's a little clip here where she uses some language that from women's suffrage movement to argue for women's right to the choice to have control over her body in regards to abortion, but also in regards to just control over her body and not have the government say what she can and can't do to her body. And whether or not you agree with abortion or not, it's this argument is well made. And she makes there's a quote that she's quoted about, and I want to say it exactly, but I'm not going to say exactly. It's about removing your boot from my neck. And I'm paraphrasing it, and she said this so beautifully. But the point is, there was a time, and it was way before you and I were alive, that women did not have the right, certain rights that and it should be noted that you're going to notice that there in this particular picture here, there are white women, right? So race was involved here as well. But this is as women, and we thought of it as white women before we acknowledge it was all women later on, that women didn't have any traditions, institutions, and majority opinion believed that women should be in the home and supporting the man. Can you imagine if you were gay at that time? What would you do? I mean, you probably couldn't even acknowledge that. That's probably a whole other set of things. But to think that a woman's role in her marriage and in the home is what defines her, that's basically. So why would a woman need to vote if a woman lives in the domestic sphere? She wouldn't have anything to say about the outside career sphere or political sphere. And so the suffrage movement said, hey, no, we do have something to say. This is our community. This is our country. We live here, and we're not idiots. And we have intelligence, and we can go to college. And this is the beginning of that. And it's a good thing, actually. It's good for everybody in terms of sharing responsibility. And of course, that's probably my opinion, but it is also my belief. So this is one example of something that happened, of which they had to really fight for it. They had to make their prima facie case. All right, let's go to the next slide. If you get a chance, watch that little clip. So how do we structure our argument? Again, we're learning these terms. Well, the first thing you have is a proposition. A proposition is basically a declarative statement, an assertion. You're asserting something. And I'm going to go back against what I said earlier. The affirmative can be you're arguing for status quo, but it generally is not. The affirmative position in a debate is usually you're arguing against the status quo. The negative wants to hold the line. Okay? They're arguing for the status quo, keep things the way they are. Affirmative argues against the status quo. Again, the prima facie case. So they have to make a prima facie case against the status quo. So it's an assertion that expresses the nature of the dispute. What does that mean, nature of dispute? Meaning, what is at stake here? So in the case of the nature of the dispute, what does it mean that 50% of the population doesn't have a vote or say about who is the political representative of your district or of your state, right? What does it mean if only men are voting? Why can't women vote? If women are allowed at that time to get educated and go to college, why don't women have the right to vote? So what's the nature of the dispute? I mean, the nature of that dispute was pure sexism, right? Pure gender phobia. I just made that up. But pure sexism. Not gender phobia. Just erase that. Okay, it's a formally stated proposition clearly divides the grounds between the disputants. So you as the affirmative in the affirmative case, you're going to have to argue what's the nature of the dispute, and it has to be clear and concrete and succinct. You're after a succinct argument. Don't waste time in lots of words. We want to get to the point. What is it? In argumentation, we get to the point. You don't want to waste your time on a lot of verbiage that you don't need. You're not writing an essay. And you need to clearly define what side, what position you're on, and what the other position is. Why do you do that? Because we need to know if there's an argument. If the other side doesn't really have a strong position, then what are you arguing? Where is the need to have any change? Okay. A well-stated proposition suggests what result the opponents are seeking. So what are they after? If you're arguing, let's say you're arguing for gay marriage, and the opponents were seeking to keep marriage as a contract between a man and a woman. And the argument for that was the function of the family, like the survival of what we think of as the family, which is tradition and values, right? Which go into religion. And religion. Marriage is between a man and a woman. It's between Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. You probably heard that one before. Marriage is an institution, right? It holds a family together, it holds a community together, it holds a nation together. If we change it, changing that institution could change everything, right? You have to know in your assertion, what is the other side? So you know how you're going to refute it. What kind of evidence are you going to bring against it? This should be clear in your statement to know what the other side thinks. Knowing your position and what the position is of your opposition. All right, when we talk about propositions, there's different kinds of what we call propositions of fact, or propositions of value, and propositions of policy. In this class, your debates will be around propositions of policy. Now, policy is something you're advocating for, a literal like legislation or a change in the rules or standards in a community. Okay, that's policy of how people should behave and act and treat each other. That's policy. Okay, or how companies should treat their employees. That's policy. Has nothing to do with fact and value. There might be facts and values in there as a part of that policy, but the policy has to do with standards of behavior, standards of conduct. Okay, we clear on that? So let's look at propositions of fact. Propositions of fact are always about something that is either true or false. It's factual. It can be proven. It's usually like something that's material or physical. And the way that you argue against a proposition of fact is argue against how you're interpreting the facts. I'm going to give you a great example. How about the fact that the earth is round? Okay, we'll just take one of that. Let's just take that. Now, people have come up with these ideas of the interpretation of those facts and how they're wrong, suggesting that the earth is flat, when it has been proven, and the only way the moon would move and makes the earth rotate the way it is in the seasons is that the earth was round. I'll tell you what, folks, if you believe the earth is flat, there's just no way we would have these seasons. The way the rotation of the earth happens, the way the moon happens, how that all happens in the gravitational pulls and the tides, etc. The earth is definitely round. You can prove it with like just using balls. There's just no way it's flat. Absolutely zero possibility. Okay, but there have been folks that are trying to prove that it's flat. So, generally resolvable with proof of material. Legal disputes are almost always a dispute about facts. So, the fact would be, I had you do work at my house, and I paid you, and you take me to court and say I didn't pay you. And so I would have to prove that I paid you. I have to come up with documents showing that I paid you, and maybe even find documents showing that you accepted the money, right? It's provable. If I didn't have any of that, I couldn't prove that I paid you. So it's actually something that you could, physical facts that you could find, that you could show something is true or false. Okay? Now, propositions of value. Disagreement over personal value or concern. We have those all the time in our society. Abortion isn't a good example. In fact, abortion is really an argument between fact and value. So some people against abortion will just say that certain things will happen during an abortion. Now, what I know about abortions, in most abortions, there's no, the embryo has no nerve endings. So this argument that it gets torn apart and all of that is not really true. It's like a glob of cells usually when people have abortions. Now, not all abortions are like that, but most are like that. Then there's the argument, it's a value argument over when life begins, because the truth is that's about your values. You can't really prove that, because if you interpret it from a biblical standpoint, those are beliefs that can't be proven. It's based on faith and what you believe. So science has their set of way they think of when life begins, how we determine when life begins. And then if you have not even biblical, it doesn't have to be a Bible, it can be any religious belief, any spiritual belief about when you believe life began, then those are it's hard to come up. These are hard arguments to make, is what I'm trying to point out, is that nobody really wins. It's not resolvable through argumentation, and it generally requires persuasion. If you were to take a persuasion class, you look at how much in persuasion emotions are used to convince people about things. And let's just go back to the pro-life, pro-choice. Pro-life arguments are completely emotion-driven. They show pictures of babies, dead babies being torn apart, all kinds of things that are going to arouse emotions. Who wants a baby to die? Nobody. Nobody, unless you're like a psychopath, right? Nobody wants to kill babies. That's awful. I mean, even in nature, they don't generally kill their babies unless there's something wrong with the baby. So we are on this planet, we don't want to do that. It's a perfect way to try to convince us that that's wrong. And I'm not advocating that abortion is right, but I'm also not advocating against pro-choice either, just so you know. So, and my advocation just means my opinion. You don't have to have that same opinion. But the point is, when it comes to value, they have to use emotion to argue. It's not the same as using fact. You can't use fact, as a matter of fact, because you're talking about values, and everyone has different values. All right, proposition of policy. I'm looking at the time here. Proposition of policy. I really want to get into that. I think we're going to stop there, and we're going to pick it up on the next lecture. Okay, I'll see you in a minute.